Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness debuting this week. I wanted to do a deep dive into the other Doctor Strange movies that have come out, and I'm not talking about the one from 2016. I'm talking about the other more obscure ones that people don't talk about so much. So today we're talking about the 1978 TV movie, Doctor Strange. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Have you even heard of the 1978 Doctor Strange TV movie? Is this the first time you're hearing about it? And if you have seen it, what do you think about it? And let's get started with the background for Doctor Strange 1978. And essentially, this movie was created to be the pilot for a TV show. If the movie had done well, we would have had a Doctor Strange TV show back in the 1970s. Back in the late 70s, CBS was optioning a bunch of Marvel properties and trying to turn them into TV shows, and they did have some success doing this, in particular with The Incredible Hulk. It was a big hit show that ran for 4 different seasons and established Lou Ferrigno as kind of this cultural icon as the Hulk, Bill Bixby as David Banner, not Bruce Banner. And that show also went on to have a series of TV movies that ran in the late 80s and early 90s. And so it was a big hit. It was highly influential, and to the extent that it was a big influence on the Incredible Hulk movie that it is within the MCU that stars Edward Norton. Also, there was a short-lived Spider-Man TV series that also had some of these TV movies that came out, and then it ran for, I believe, 13 episodes. And if you only run for 13 episodes, you're not quite as successful. Not quite as much of a hit, but at least it did get a series run. And growing up, I watched a decent amount of the Incredible Hulk show. That I think even when it came out on DVD, I did buy several of the DVDs and rented some from Netflix when Netflix was a DVD service through the mail. And so I've seen quite a bit of The Incredible Hulk. I've seen significantly less of the Spider-Man show. And I checked it out. I was aware of its existence. It came on television, saw a few things like, oh, Spider-Man. But it didn't have, wasn't nearly as good of a show as The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk was essentially The Fugitive, which was a gigantic hit TV show in the 60s, and then it was a gigantic hit movie in the early 90s with Harrison Ford, and that's what the Hulk was. It was also very similar to Kung Fu that came out about 5 years before it came out, about this well-intentioned person that kind of has to wander. In each episode, they wander to a new place where they help people, and inevitably, somehow, the Hulk is important to this journey of helping this person, this community, whatever it is. And that's what The Fugitive was, that's what Kung Fu was, that's what The Incredible Hulk was. And Spider-Man, it just didn't seem like they had that hook. It didn't quite work with where the technology was at, what you could do with special effects, the nature of Spider-Man. It just didn't work. With the Hulk, you could get a bodybuilder and paint him green and have him throw boxes, climbing buildings and swinging. The Spider-Man stuff, it's just more difficult to do, so the show didn't work. But they tried one more time to make this happen, and they tried to make a Doctor Strange film. And Stan Lee was even very involved in the production and has very positive things to say about his experience working on it. He enjoyed working on the production, but whenever it debuted, the ratings were horrible, and it wasn't particularly well received either. So it was just kind of like this flash in the pan of like, let's try Doctor Strange 2. Let's see how the movie does. And then they put it out there. They tried it, and it didn't work. With that said, let's talk about why it didn't work. So this was a first-time watch for me. I watched it just 2-3 days back, and simply put, it's not very good. Some of that's the obvious reasons that it's a 45-year-old Doctor Strange TV movie. Doctor Strange involves magic, and what you could do on a TV budget back in the late 70s. It doesn't look very good. It hasn't aged well, and so it just doesn't translate. There's certain types of things when you're trying to do special effects on a budget 45 years ago, it looks bad, it looks cheesy, it doesn't work all that well. But that's the superficial reason it doesn't work. At its core, the story isn't very engaging. And they remove several of the things that kind of give some weight and intrigue to Doctor Strange. So in this version, Doctor Strange works he's a psychiatric doctor. He's a therapist of sorts. He's not a surgeon. He works with psych patients, with people that are mentally ill, which pretty dramatically changes his origin story and in a way that makes it much less compelling. And to that point, in this 90-minute TV movie, Doctor Strange doesn't really have much of a character arc. Now, he goes on a journey from doctor to sorcerer. He gains powers, but it's not done in a way where there's some character flaw. There's some way that he needs to grow at the beginning, and through this journey of becoming a sorcerer, he becomes the better version of himself. Not just because he can do magic, but because he becomes a better person. Last night, I rewatched Doctor Strange 2016, and at the beginning of that movie, Stephen Strange is an insufferable douchebag that is entirely selfish. By the end of it, he is a sufferable douchebag that thinks about other people. Still kind of a jerk, still an egomaniac, but he actually cares about other people. There's a character arc there. And in this TV movie, it's just Doctor Strange. He's just a guy working at the psych ward and then kind of gets swept up in this adventure and gains powers, but he doesn't grow. He doesn't change. He just gains powers. Other big, gigantic problem here is that it takes way too long for even some of this stuff to kick in, and for even Doctor Strange to be a significant part of it. Where the first episode is essentially, he's just working at this hospital where he works, and the main villain shows up, and it's actually played by Jessica Walter, who is the matriarch on Arrested Development, which was strange to say because I haven't seen much of her work when she was younger. I guess I've seen Play Misty for me, the Clint Eastwood movie, but I hadn't seen anything in a while that was from her when she was young. I've only seen her as kind of the 60-year-old member of the Bluth family. So this was her when she was still young, very pretty, and she's evil in it as this evil sorceress lady. And so she's kind of messing around with the world, trying to bring evil spirits or realms in and things like that, as happens in Doctor Strange. So she starts messing with this one lady, and that lady ends up at the hospital where Doctor Strange works. And so then it just plays like a medical procedural where he's trying to help this lady that's mentally ill, and he can tell something else is going on here, and she's like, don't let me sleep, and so he's not going to let her sleep, and the other doctors want her to sleep, and he's trying to get them not put meds on him, and then the doctor that's his boss overrules him and gives her meds. But we only got 90 minutes, and we spend 20 minutes of our 90 minutes about will this lady be put on sleep meds. I'm watching Doctor Strange. I'm not watching ER, since ER wouldn't come into existence for another 15 years. It's just like the wrong focus. Like, it's conflict, it's tension, but in the totally wrong direction that you want for Doctor Strange. I'm sure this was done for budgetary reasons. It's very expensive to do special effects. This TV movie, 1970s. I kind of get it, but also kind of don't. There's other ways to have excitement, tension, or spend time bringing Doctor Strange into the world of magic sooner, have him training or something, or reading something. No. We have him arguing with his boss about whether we're going to give this lady sleep meds. It's just not very interesting. And then from there, essentially, the way that Doctor Strange gets wrapped up into this is like he's kind of like the chosen one, and his dad was somewhat involved in it, but his dad wasn't a sorcerer, but knew about it, something like that. And so then, just because he's the chosen one, he gets pulled into this world, and like, you have to fight her. And pretty much instantly, he knows his powers, can use his powers, and is using them to fight back against our villain. No training, no setting things up. In which case, it's just not... It's a story where like the tension that's interesting. How will he get better? How will he grow as a person? That doesn't happen. But the tension of, will the girl get sleep meds? That's a big deal. And so it's just frustrating. And so in the back half, you do get quite a bit of going into astral planes and pulling yourself out of your body and pulling people that are in comas back to this world. You get those visuals and special effects and stuff like that when you move into the back half. But once again, where I started, superficially speaking, they just weren't able to do something that has stood the test of time. 1970s TV movie magic special effects do not age well. They do not age well at all. And which case it's just kind of like cheap green screens and people in front of rear projection and bright colors and silhouette monsters and stuff. But it's cheap effects from the 70s. So it's tough to get much of enjoyment out of it, in which case, if you can't enjoy the eye candy, because it is not eye candy, then you're left with, how's the story? And you're left with a plot where not much happens. It spends way too much time as a medical procedural. Our lead character is kind of in the background for the first 35 minutes of it. And when he does join in, he doesn't have a character arc. He doesn't really grow and change other than gaining powers, but him as a person, as a character, doesn't grow and change. And so it was interesting to watch just to see how the genre has progressed and the level of sophistication that we currently have in comic book TV shows, what you can do now, even whether the writing, of course, the special effects, the budget, how seriously they're taken versus what it was like back then. So it's interesting to watch from a historic standpoint. It's not really entertaining as a movie in and of itself. And even as I kind of alluded to through some of these things, it's not even a good representation of Doctor Strange. He's not a surgeon. His hands don't get smashed. He's not an egomaniac. In fact, even on the characterization, that's one of the problems, is that he doesn't have a clear characterization. He's just kind of this guy. Kind of nice. Kind of competent, but not that competent. It's if you ask me to list qualities or describe him, who is he? What makes him tick? I couldn't tell you. And that's not a good sign. When there's so little nuance to your character, that's your title character. And that's the stuff that needs to work when you can't focus in on just eye candy, special effects, spectacle, and your character isn't well developed. He's not very interesting. And you can even contrast that going back to so much of what makes the Incredible Hulk TV show really compelling is that David Banner is a person that's well fleshed out in the initial 90-minute TV movie where you have this origin story for him. You know what David Banner wants. You know what he's working towards. You know why he's working towards it. The conflict that's within him about it that leads him to experiment in a way that causes him to become the Hulk. But you know, you understand all of it. And there's a tragedy to it. And you know what he values, who he loves. This Stephen Strange, you don't. It's not a good version of the comic book character. It's just not a good character either. He's just not very interesting. There's not much to him. There's nothing there. And the eye candy is not eye candy whatsoever. So, on the off chance you do want to check this one out, be warned. It's pretty boring. Not much happens, and when it does happen, it's not all that cool. It does have a pretty funky 70s soundtrack that actually reminded me kind of the soundtrack of Terminator, with the it's that type of stuff whenever something tense is happening and it's going it's doing that. That's the thing that stuck out to me the most. Two things stuck out to me most: seeing Jessica Walter when she was young and the soundtrack. Everything else totally forgettable. Bland, unfortunately. So I wouldn't score something like this because it feels unfair to rate a TV movie that's 45 years old to modern day things. But I would say I don't recommend it, other than for historical sake. If you just want to know some backstory to learn a bit more about it, you can check it out that way. But it's not good. It's not memorable. There's not much to it. That's my take on it. If you've seen it, I'd love to hear some other people's thoughts on it, some perspectives. Otherwise, did you even know it existed? Let me know down below. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.